Hey, young people. Welcome back. This is week 1, day 1 of Latin 2. Right before we left for break, we learned about this type of mood called the subjunctive. Remember that mood is what we call an aspect of a verb, and the mood indicates basically the relationship between the verb and fact. An indicative verb is factual. It's usually just a statement of fact. An imperative verb, on the other hand, is a command. A subjunctive verb is usually either hypothetical or contrary to fact. So far, you're going to see eventually the subjunctive is also sort of this catch-all mood in Latin. They use the subjunctive in a lot of grammatical forms just by rule. They use it in ways where we would never use the subjunctive in English. The subjunctives you learned before we left for spring break were the volitive and the optative. We'll come back and review those later. The important thing for today is I want you to learn the forms of the other subjunctives besides first conjugation. Get out page 2 of the pink sheet and take a look at it. It should look like this, except down here the charts should be filled in on your pink paper with the verb amo. By the way, if you don't have this pink paper, just use a sheet of notebook paper like this, or you can download this paper off of Edsby. I put up the file. You can print it out and write it on there. I do want you to have a physical copy, and today's assignment includes submitting a picture of what you write on here today. Now, for most of you, you're not going to have to write very much, because everything should be filled in except for this little chart up here. So where it says conjugation and subjunctive stem letter, we already filled in the stem letter for first conjugation. You learned that in chapter 1. That stem letter is the letter E. So when we filled this in for amo, it's the stem, am, plus the stem letter E, plus the personal ending. So you ended up with something like this. E, and MST must dissent. So, amem, I may or should love. Amace, you may or should love. Amet, he, she, it may or should love. What about all these other conjugations, though? Well, that's what you're going to learn in this chapter. This is tricky because usually things form for a given verb form the same across all the conjugations, with the exception of, let's say, the future tense, which is slightly different for first and second conjugation versus third and fourth. For the present subjunctive, it's different for every single conjugation. So, for first conjugation, it's stem plus subjunctive stem letter plus active personal ending, but that subjunctive stem letter is E. If it were a second conjugation verb, it would be the same, except that subjunctive stem letter is E-A. For third, the subjunctive stem letter is simply the letter A. For third I-O, the subjunctive stem letter is I-A. And for fourth, the subjunctive stem letter is also I-A. So, for example, even though you already have the plural filled in, let's say this were a second conjugation verb, habeo, you would say hab is a stem, plus ea, plus mus. So habeamos, and this would translate as we may have, or we should have. For the passive voice, same thing. You should already have this filled in, but let's pick something that's third conjugation. Let's try mito to send. You have mit, plus you have a, plus you have the passive, so R. So this is I may be sent or I should be sent, depending on context. That letter changes depending on the conjugation. So it's completely different from one form to the next to the next. It all depends on conjugation. How can you remember this pattern? E, EA, A, IA, IA. There's a couple of mnemonics for this. And I want you to jot this down on your pink paper. My preferred one is she wears a giant diamond. When you see this phrase, all you're doing is looking at the vowels in order. So she has an E. That's the first conjugation subjunctive stem letter. Wears has an EA. That's the second conjugation subjunctive stem letters. Third has an A. Third IO has an IA. And fourth has an IA also. And you know there's no fifth, so you never get to the O there. So instead of remembering E, EA, A, IA, IA, just remember she wears a giant diamond. There's a bunch of other mnemonics that you can use that are like this. There's also she wears a diamond tiara, I've seen. We beat a giant liar is another one. We eat caviar, and then you just leave out the third IO. We with an E, eat with an EA, caviar with an A, IA. So, there are a lot of different ways you can do this. You will have a quiz on this where I'm going to give you a verb of differing conjugations, and you're going to have to form it in the present subjunctive using this mnemonic or just memorizing the chart. But this is really critical. You need to know the E, EA, A, IA, IA. This entire chart on your pink paper should now be filled in for the present subjunctive. So even though mine is partially blank and I put in a couple of stray verbs in here just to make sure that I could demonstrate how it changes depending on conjugation, this should already be filled in with amo. And you should have added this chart today. You should have added this mnemonic. She wears a giant diamond at the top. Take a picture of this with your phone and upload it to the file that I have. It's set up as an assignment on Edsby, and it's called Present Subjunctive Sheet Notes. If you upload it to that file, you'll get 10 points for this today. Thank you. See you later.